up, everyone? Welcome to the State Phillies Sports History for May 22nd, 2024. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. As has become our tradition, happy hump day. We're slowly creeping up on the weekend, which is Memorial Day, the unofficial start of summer. I always look forward to Memorial Day because it means the school year is winding down, summer fun, all that other good stuff. And let's start with our baseball team because Memorial Day is usually the first sort of benchmark quarter pole for the Major League Baseball season. And if you are a lifetime Phillies fan like me, or if you're older than a certain age, I guess I should say more so than anything, because I guess there is a generation that grew up with the Phillies during the 07-11 era, went through those lean years, and now they're back. They don't really know what it was like in the late 80s, early 90s, when you guys had Steve Jeltz as your shortstop, Don Carmen, Bruce Ruffin, excuse me, guys like that. That's who you were rolling out there. Mike Maddox, we had a Mike Maddox sighting. I didn't realize he's the pitching coach for the Rangers, so we just talked about him last week. Mike Maddox was in Citizens Bank Park. But usually there's been so many times that the Phillies have been completely out of it by Memorial Day. And it just is what it is. And I mean, the past couple of years, they've gotten off to those slow starts where it's been sort of like, and they've almost been out of it. But heading into Memorial Day, looks like your Phillies are going to have a lead in the division and be looking as one of the favorites. And hopefully last night's game, and I know there's still two more games to play in this series. I know there's still a lot more baseball to be played, but hopefully this helps put to bed some of those. It's the schedule. The schedule's too easy. They're not that good. Narratives. 5-2 last night over the defending champs. And yes, it's a different team than what they had last year, but this team was focused. And I heard a couple times on the radio, and I believe they mentioned it during the broadcast as well, that this was an important series for this team because I think one thing about this team is how they're playing and how well they get along. They are super aware of what's happening. They know, and Bryce calls into or listens to WIP all the time, so they know what the narrative and what people are saying. And it's not a lot, but there are those people, like we talked about yesterday, that are like, oh, the schedule, and this is schedule's too easy. So this was an important series for them to kind of go out and hopefully prove that it's not because they're playing the Rockies and the White Sox and the Nationals, that this team is a damn good team. And top to bottom yesterday, they played very well. Ranger was outstanding. I think he is slowly becoming my favorite Philly, but matched his career high in strikeouts and gave up a run or whatever early, and instead of folding, they come right back and just get it together. Bohm was clutch with the RBI. They said at one point during the broadcast, if you were listening, John Gray was one of the best pitchers with limiting RBIs versus the best RBI guy right now in baseball, and Bohm. Bohm got the best of him, knocked in Harper to tie that game up. And then Harper's home run, Stott. This team is fun. And hopefully, again, there's a lot of baseball to play, but I'm hoping that this really helps put to bed some of those, the schedule's weak because they're doing what they should be doing to these teams. So Braves lost last night, so they have a 6-game lead right now. So it depends. No matter what happens the rest of this week, the Phillies will be in first place at Memorial Day. And for somebody who grew up with the late 80s, early 90s teams when they were already 20 games out of first place at this point in the season, I'm ecstatic. And this is fun. And I really, really love those 07-11 teams. So enjoy it. I know there's still 2 more games, but let's get one more win tonight and take just another series like they do and head into Memorial Day and have a little bit of fun with the baseball team. Couple quick housekeeping notes with the Phillies. It seems as I was doing the research, and a lot of you had reached out to me and quickly reminded me that Juan Bell was not that good in the field. And part of the reason that they released him, and I forgot about this, and I was able to go back through, and as always, I like to keep whatever I'm giving you to be as accurate as possible. He made a couple errors on opening day, and then he was getting booed because of his play in the field. So he turned into a liability in the field. So I may have oversold his fielding just a bit. And by just a bit, I mean a whole lot. He was just not good, and he couldn't hit on top of it. So I think if they could have gotten any type of fielding consistently out of him, they would have been fine. So I remember that people wanted somebody else at shortstop, but I may have grossly oversold his fielding ability, so I do apologize for that. And then if this team wasn't already likable enough, Bryce Harper goes yesterday and asks the kid, or goes with the kid to ask a girl to go to prom with her, or with him, which is pretty cool. I mean, one of those things that, like, he didn't have to do, but is such a cool moment and just shows how much. And I know a lot of people sometimes will say, oh, well, he's pandering this, and maybe he is, but this is the kind of thing. Like he said when he came here, he wants to make this his home, so he's in the community. And again, it's not a big deal. Like, oh, he's not giving millions of dollars to charity, but little things like that go a long way. So I thought it was a pretty cool thing. So kudos to Bryce. Hopefully now that dude can live up to the expectations that he set, because, I mean, Bryce Harper isn't always going to be there, but I digress. But I thought it was a pretty cool move, and just shows how likable this team is. All right, that leads us into a recap of yesterday's question of the day. Speaking of likable, one of the all-time fan favorite teams in Philadelphia sports history, the '93 Phillies. I asked you, who was your favorite Philly from them? From that team, I should say, and it wasn't even close. 47% of you said John Kruk. And then the next closest were Darren Dalton and Jim Eisenreich got a lot of votes at 16%. And then just everybody was all over the place between Dykstra, Dave Hollins, Tommy Green, another fan favorite. And I don't even know. He's a good player, had the unassisted triple play, but I think he's always going to be remembered for the way Harry Kalas said his name, and that is one Mickey Morandini. But as always, thank you for participating in the question of the day. There'll be another one later in the show. 267-495-8531. Send your text message thoughts. Send your voicemail thoughts. Let me know what you're thinking. Is there a Philly that we forgot? Am I over, as I tend to do sometimes? Am I putting the red glasses on and drinking the red Kool-Aid with this Phillies team? Let me know what you're thinking. 267-495-8531. That's the Back to the Future voice and text line. You can also hit me up on social media, Jimbo_Mott, Twitter, and TikTok, at Philly Jimbo on Instagram. Hit me up on Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mott. With the summertime approaching, I have some things in my head that I'm kind of working on. So as I have more time, best way to do it is subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mott. Like wherever you're listening or watching this every day, just hit the thumb and like this, and let's grow this thing. We have a ton of fun stuff on the horizon. The nickname tournament is scheduled now. I've got it firmly in place. June 24th, that is going to kick off. I got Joe Lenardi, Joey Buckets working with me. Not really, in case anybody was wondering. But the selection committee is in the war room. It looks like the top 8 seeds are set. There might be some maneuvering depending on how the conference tournaments go. But one thing I've noticed as I'm trying to get this up and running, there are a lot more names in baseball and hockey than the other sports. It seems like baseball specifically is very much a nickname-driven sport. So it's almost like baseball is like the SEC or the ACC, where there's 10 teams that could make it in, and it's like we got to try to get some of those mid majors in. But anyway, having fun putting that together. Once we get there, I might do a little something on the 23rd where I announce the top 4 seeds for you. But we'll see. Having fun with it. June 24th, though, we will do 2 matchups a day leading up to the championship on July 25th. All right. If you're interested in Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame induction tickets, the information is in the description. Be sure to check out the list of the inductees. I'm telling you, this is going to be a big class. Starting to get some confirmations of who's going to be in attendance. And if you're a St. Joe's person, it's going to be a bit large contingent of St. Joe's folks there for Jameer and Paul Westhead. So get your tickets before they sell out. And then if you have a business or are interested in donating something for the silent auction or being a sponsor, let me know that as well. But should be a good time. You know what else is a good time? Philly Goat. And I told you the time is running out to get your gear for the London series, but it's good for the 4th of July as well. I mean, anytime you get to stick it to the British, do it, whether it's the Founding Fathers with the Fanatic, the Britain Blue of 13 colony lead, and it's always fun to scuff Mrs. Met. So go to phillygoat.com, use the promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off your order. That's phillygoat.com, promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off of your order. And I'm hoping if you're out there listening, we need a Go-Go Power Ranger or Go-Go Ranger Suarez shirt. It's got to be there. There's the Power Ranger section in the Citizens Bank Park last night. We need a Ranger Suarez shirt. Let's make it happen. All right, some Eagles news. Devontae Parker retired, joining a short list, but a lot of big names of players that were signed by the Eagles and then retired. Miles Jack last year, if you remember, Frank Gore at one point, I believe, signed and retired. I forget the Frank Gore story, but leaves the Eagles somewhat thin. They have some guys that will be in play for that spot. Aeneas Smith, Johnny Wilson, Paris Campbell. There's some free agents out there. And all of a sudden, I mean, this was always going to be one of the question marks for this team. But it's one of those areas where, all right, somebody needs to step up because you have AJ and Devontae, but then you don't have anybody really that established. So should be one of those fun battles, especially with OTAs picking back up today. Hopefully we have some updates and see sort of who was slotted in there, and hopefully like Aeneas Smith or Johnny Wilson are able to really step in and take over those reins. But again, it's when you're talking about your third, fourth, fifth receivers, like that should be a fun battle going into training camp. And there's always free agents out there. I know. Why can't I think of his name now? The old. Michael Thomas for the Saints is out there, and there's a couple other dudes that were out there. So we'll see how he has up his sleeve, but I trust that they're going to do the right thing. Some Sixers news. I know that a lot of people have been talking about Paul George. Now it seems like the belief around the league is that he's going to stay in LA. He's an LA guy. So really doesn't make much sense in this stage of his career to come back east. I hope that's right. I mean, of all of that, I'd rather just kind of piecemeal it together for a year and see what the free agent class next year goes. I need somebody young. I don't know. I just don't want Paul George. I don't want Jimmy Butler. I don't know who else is out there, though, and it's just... it's not like I have faith in Daryl Morey to make the right decision either. But we'll see. Hopefully it's not Paul George, but it does seem like that's what people are saying, that it looks like he's going to stay out west. So be sure to check out my boys at the Clashing Conferences. They were talking about this as well as the stuff for the playoffs. Anywhere you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube. All right. It seems like we're going to have a daily, for at least the next couple of weeks, a daily Flyers watch. We'll call it the Michkov watch. But I got some clarification yesterday, or on what I had spoke about yesterday. And it's up to his agent and him to negotiate the deal to get out of his KHL contract. Flyers are not allowed to pay it. It's completely up to the player and the agent. And if you're thinking the same thing I did, well, let him just pay the money and the Flyers will reimburse him. He's not going to have that kind of money. So the contracts per the CBA are set at a specific rate. So he's only going to get over like $900,000 or something per year. We don't have any updates on where it stands, but we'll continue to monitor and we'll have our daily Michkov update. Hopefully it gets settled before the draft, because I will say that's going to determine if Michkov is coming over, all of a sudden changes what Danny Briere and Keith Jones do in the draft. But we will have our Michkov update daily until we get a decision or resolution to this situation. All right, today we're going to go back to 1963. And on this day in 1963, Syracuse National owner Danny Biasone, I think I'm pronouncing that right. It's either Biasone or Biasone. Since he's from Italy, I'm assuming it's Biasone. But Biasone helped get the shot clock implemented in the NBA. More on that in a minute. But Biasone sold the team, the Syracuse Nationals, to Irv Kosloff and Ike Richmond, who then decided to move the team to Philadelphia, filling the void of the Philadelphia Warriors, who moved to San Francisco the year before. They had a naming contest, and the winning name and submission was the 76ers. So that is how the 76ers came to be. Now, back to the Nationals. They were in the NBA since 1949. Before that, they were in the NBL. And just were one of the better teams. And the NBL was a lot of Midwestern small town teams. And as the NBA started to grow into the larger cities, they absorbed some of these teams like Detroit, Syracuse, and that's sort of where why they ended up having to sell the team and move to Philly. It's just as the teams started going to the bigger cities, it was just Syracuse just was not big enough to support the team the way a city like Philadelphia would, who already had an NBA team and was dying to get back because at that time the Phillies were terrible and the NFL, the Eagles were coming off. They were 3 years removed from a championship, but the NFL was not what it is today. So basketball was king, so Philly was dying to get that NBA team back. But back to Biasone, he and general manager Leo Ferris introduced the 24-second shot clock to the NBA in a way to increase scoring and make the game more exciting, to get more folks to buy tickets. So in that way, Biasone was very innovative, and it worked. I mean, I guess they chose 24, I was reading, because they figured, I forget the exact math, but there was a specific number of possessions that it would increase throughout a typical game per quarter. And they were right. It made the game more exciting. We talked a couple months ago about that Temple, Tennessee game that was like 11-7 or something, because the teams just held the ball. And Biasone was like, no, we cannot do that. We need to have a shot clock, 24 seconds, make the game more exciting. And I mean, since then it stuck. I mean, the shot clock is still 24 seconds for the NBA. So that's one of his lasting legacy. He is in the Hall of Fame after he died due to his contributions to the game. But the Nationals won 3 Eastern Division titles while in Syracuse, and then the 1955 NBA championship. The top 2 players probably from Syracuse were number 4, Dolph Schayes, whose number 4 hangs in the rafters at the Wells Fargo Center. He was he played his entire career, I should say, with the Nationals. And then Hal Greer was originally drafted by the Nationals, played most of his career after the move to Philadelphia. His number 15 hangs from the rafters as well. They do have that 1955 championship, which leads us to today's question of the day. It is the same organization, but knowing how we are and how championship deprived, should that Syracuse Nationals title count for the Sixers total, which the NBA does count it as the Sixers championship? Let me know what you think. 267-495-8531. Get you into the Back to the Future voice and text line. Should the Syracuse Nationals championship count for the Sixers total? At this point, I think it should. I mean, it's from the 50s, the early days of the NBA. But let me know what you think. Send me a text. Hit me up on social media. Leave a voicemail, whatever you got to do. Should the Nationals championship count for the Sixers total? Finally, today, it's a family affair, and today's spotlight is Chris Long, defensive end, who signed with the Eagles in 2017, ironically enough, on his 32nd birthday, donated all of his 2017 salary to charity, started 16 games that year, had 5 sacks, a career high, 4 forced fumbles, and was huge throughout that entire playoff Super Bowl run. Came back the next year in 2018, 2 forced fumbles, 6.5 sacks, won the Walter Payton Man of the Year award, one of 3 Eagles to ever do it, along with Troy Vincent and Harold Carmichael, and then retired, but he helped the Eagles win a Super Bowl. Now, he has a brother, Kyle, who's a Pro Bowl guard for the Bears, was also a second-team All-Pro. And then, of course, we know his dad, Howie Long, 3-time All-Pro, Super Bowl champion, 8-time Pro Bowler, the 1980s All-NFL Decade Team, or All-Decade Team, NFL 1980s All-Decade Team, Howie Long, as well as a Hall of Famer. I would say that this is definitely not a case of us having the wrong brother, because Chris was a key contributor to that Super Bowl team. And I mean, as of right now, it's the high point of our Eagle fandom, was winning that Super Bowl. Thanks in small part, or maybe even a large part, whatever you want to say, to Chris Long. Today's spotlight for It's a Family Affair. Remember to answer the question of the day. Should the Syracuse Nationals title be counted for the Sixers? On this day in 1963, the Syracuse Nationals were officially sold to Irv Kosloff and Ike Richmond, who moved the team to Philly, ran a contest, and nicknamed them the 76ers. We'll have more on the Michkov watch tomorrow. Sixers looking to win the series tonight against the Rangers. Let me know your thoughts on Paul George, too. And again, I am firmly in the I don't want Paul George. I want Paul George from 10 years ago. I don't want Paul George next year. But let me know what you're thinking. Stay tuned as well for the nickname tournament coming soon to a podcast near you. Happy Hump Day. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for May 22nd, 2024. I'm Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a Wednesday. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.